The city had a way of swallowing people whole. In Manhattan, dreams were built in glass towers, but broken on sidewalks. Every morning, thousands rushed past one another, chasing meetings, money, and meaning, rarely looking down. And when they did, they looked away quickly, because looking too long at suffering made people uncomfortable. Please do well to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss any of our stories. That was how Amara learned to survive without being seen. At 14 years old, Amara had no address, no guardians, and no safety net. Her home was a narrow space beneath an old bridge where the smell of damp concrete mixed with the distant hum of traffic. At night, the city lights flickered above her like stars that refused to come close. She owned one backpack. Inside it were 2 shirts, a pair of worn trousers, a tattered notebook, and a photograph folded so many times it had nearly torn in half. The picture showed a smiling man and woman standing behind a younger Amara, their hands resting proudly on her shoulders. Her parents. 2 years earlier, they had been everything. Her mother, Nia, was a seamstress with gentle hands and a laugh that could soften anger. She worked long hours, but always returned home humming old songs as she cooked. Her father, Jonah, repaired radios and electronics for neighbors who couldn't afford new ones. He spoke slowly, thoughtfully, as though every word mattered. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. It was cramped, noisy, and warm. On Sundays, they shared stories instead of gifts. On hard days, they shared prayers instead of complaints. Happiness is not pretending, Nia used to say while braiding Amara's hair. It is choosing light even when darkness knocks. Jonah would smile and add, the body listens to the heart. Fill the heart with fear, and the body weakens. Fill it with joy, and healing begins. Those words shaped Amara more than any school lesson ever could. The accident came without warning. One rainy evening, Nia and Jonah were crossing the street after closing the shop early. A speeding car ran the red light. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The world split into before and after. The driver never stopped. Amara never said goodbye. After the funeral, life became a blur of offices, forms, and unfamiliar faces. Social workers tried. Shelters tried. Distant relatives made promises they never kept. Eventually, Amara slipped through the cracks quietly, the way broken things often do. She cried for months. Then one morning, sitting alone under the bridge, she remembered her father's words. If the heart gives up, the body follows. So she made a choice. Amara decided she would survive with joy, not because life was kind, but because bitterness would destroy what little she had left. Each day, she woke before sunrise. She folded her cardboard mat neatly, whispered a prayer for her parents, and stepped into the city. She collected bottles, ran errands, swept sidewalks, and sometimes sang softly to herself. People noticed the singing, not because it was loud, but because it was hopeful. By afternoon, she often sat outside the public library. She liked the quiet, the smell of books drifting through open doors. She imagined herself reading again one day, learning again, becoming more than a forgotten child. That was where fate found her. On an unusually calm afternoon, the street grew quiet. A black luxury car rolled to a stop, polished like a mirror. 2 bodyguards stepped out first, alert and tense. Then a man emerged, tall, well-dressed, shoulders heavy with invisible weight. Amara had never seen Victor Harrington before, but she recognized sorrow. Behind him, they carefully rolled out a wheelchair. Inside sat a girl about Amara's age. Her clothes were expensive, her hair perfectly styled, but her eyes were empty. Her lips were closed, not in stubbornness, but in silence. Amara's chest tightened. She didn't see wealth. She saw loneliness. Before fear could stop her, Amara stepped closer and crouched beside the wheelchair. "Hi," she said gently. "I like your shoes." The guards stiffened. Victor snapped, "Step away." But then something small and impossible happened. The girl blinked. Her fingers twitched. Amara smiled. And in that moment, without knowing it, a homeless girl changed the direction of a powerful family forever. Victor Harrington was a man the world admired. Magazines called him a visionary. Investors called him unstoppable. Employees called him demanding but fair. His name moved markets. His decisions shaped industries. By 42, he had more money than he could ever spend and more influence than most politicians. Yet every Morning. When Victor opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was dread. Not because of business, because of silence. He rose from his king-sized bed in a glass mansion overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, but Victor never noticed it anymore. He moved through the house quietly, as though sound itself might shatter something fragile. At the end of the hallway was a door he both longed to open and feared. Lila's room. Before the accident, that room had been alive. Music posters on the wall, books stacked carelessly on the floor, laughter echoing down the halls. Lila talked constantly, about school, about dreams, about questions she wanted answered immediately. Now, the room was too neat, too quiet. Lila sat by the window in her wheelchair, staring at nothing in particular. Her eyes followed birds sometimes, but her lips never moved. "Good morning, sweetheart," Victor said softly. No response. He tried anyway. He always did. Victor blamed himself. The accident replayed in his mind like a cruel loop. That morning, Lila had begged him to pick her up from school. He had promised he would, but a meeting ran late. An important deal. One that could wait, he realized, too late. The driver took her instead. Rain slicked the roads. A drunk driver ran a red light. The call came while Victor was shaking hands and smiling. From that moment on, money meant nothing. Victor spared no expense after the accident. Neurologists, trauma specialists, speech therapists. He flew them in from all over the world. Each came with hope, charts, and complicated explanations. "She'll speak again," some said confidently. Others avoided promises. Months passed. Nothing changed. Lila's vocal cords were intact. Her brain scans showed no irreversible damage. And yet, her voice remained locked away. One doctor finally said what the others would not. "Sometimes the mind protects itself," he explained carefully. "The silence may be emotional, not physical." Victor slammed his fist on the table. "So what do I do? Pay for better emotions?" The doctor had no answer. At night, Victor drank alone. He stared at old videos of Lila laughing, singing, arguing. The contrast crushed him. He would have traded every dollar he owned to hear her say his name again. One afternoon, suffocating under the weight of the house, Victor ordered the driver to take them out. "Anywhere," he said. The car stopped near the public library. As the guards rolled Lila onto the sidewalk, Victor noticed movement nearby, a thin girl watching them with open curiosity. Before he could react, she approached. "Hi," the girl said to Lila, smiling brightly. "I like your shoes." Victor snapped, "Get away." But then he saw it. Lila blinked. Her fingers twitched slightly against the armrest. The girl didn't flinch. She smiled wider. "My parents said happiness can unlock trapped things," she said gently. Victor scoffed. "You think joy fixes brain injuries?" The girl met his eyes without fear. "I think fear keeps people broken." That night, Victor couldn't sleep. For the first time in months, he felt something unfamiliar. Hope. And hope terrified him. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do well to subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you help us share more stories that transform lives. In the comments, tell us how this story stood out to you. Hope did not arrive quietly. It crept in, small and fragile, through moments no one could explain. Victor began bringing Lila to the library twice a week. At first, the visits were short and cautious. Doctors warned against stimulation. Therapists insisted on controlled environments. Victor ignored them all, and Amara was always there. She never asked for permission. She never asked for money. She simply showed up, smiling, barefoot some days, carrying stories like gifts. She talked to Lila as if nothing was wrong. She told her about pigeons that fought over breadcrumbs like old men arguing, about the librarian who smelled like peppermint, about how clouds looked like they were practicing becoming something else. Sometimes she sang softly. Lila listened. Her eyes followed Amara's movements. Her fingers tapped lightly to rhythms only she could hear. Once, just once, her lips curved upward. Victor noticed everything. So did the doctors. They were not pleased. "This is uncontrolled exposure," one neurologist warned during a meeting. "If the patient regresses, it will be catastrophic." Victor leaned forward. "She hasn't regressed. She's improving." "You want improvement," the doctor replied. Or you want a miracle? Victor had no answer. Word spread quietly at first. Staff whispered. Nurses watched Amara closely. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with suspicion. Who was this homeless girl? Why did Lila respond to her? And what would happen if it all fell apart? Victor arranged for Amara to come to the mansion. The first time she stepped inside, Amara froze. The ceilings were high, the floors polished, the air heavy with silence. She clutched her backpack tightly, suddenly aware of how small she was. You can leave any time, Victor said gently. No one will force you. Amara nodded. I just want to help. In the mansion, the changes became harder to ignore. Lila began reacting more. She laughed, once, at one of Amara's silly dances. A soundless laugh, but unmistakable. Tears streamed down Victor's face that night. But hope has enemies. The lead therapist demanded a halt. This is emotional dependency, she argued. If the girl is removed suddenly, the damage could be irreversible. Victor hesitated. Amara overheard the conversation. That night, she packed her backpack. She didn't want to be the reason Lila hurt again. The next day, she didn't come. Lila noticed immediately. She grew restless. Her hands shook. Her breathing quickened. Panic flooded her eyes. Monitors beeped. Doctors rushed in. Victor shouted orders. Where is she? Where's Amara? Someone found her under the bridge. Victor drove himself. I never meant to hurt her, Amara cried. I was just trying to make her happy. Back at the hospital, Lila's body trembled uncontrollably. Victor knelt beside her. It's okay. I'm here. Her lips quivered. The room fell silent. Daddy. The word was broken. Fragile. Real. Doctors froze. Victor collapsed to his knees. Hope had won, but not without nearly destroying them all. The word lingered in the air long after it was spoken. Daddy. It was soft, fragile, almost afraid of itself, but it was real. Victor Harrington did not remember how he fell to the floor. He only knew that suddenly his knees could no longer carry the weight of what his heart was feeling. Tears streamed freely. Down his face, tears he had held back for months, tears no amount of money had been able to stop. Doctors rushed forward, voices overlapping, machines beeping urgently, but Victor barely heard them. His eyes were locked on his daughter's face. Lila looked exhausted. Her breathing was uneven, her body weak from the emotional storm that had torn through her. But her eyes were alive in a way Victor had not seen since before the accident. She spoke, one doctor whispered, disbelief thick in his voice. Another shook her head slowly. This shouldn't be possible. Victor finally stood, his hands trembling. It is possible, he said hoarsely. Because it happened. Recovery did not come overnight. Lila did not suddenly regain her full voice. Some days she could manage only a syllable. Other days, nothing at all. The progress was slow, frustrating, and uneven, but the silence was broken, and that changed everything. The doctors adjusted their approach. Therapy shifted from pressure to patience, from force to encouragement. They could not deny the evidence any longer. Something emotional had been unlocked, and that something had a name. Amara. Victor found her sitting quietly in the hospital hallway, her backpack clutched tightly in her lap. She looked smaller than ever, as though afraid to take up space. You didn't hurt her, Victor said softly. Amara looked up, eyes wide. I was scared, she whispered. I didn't want to be the reason she broke more. Victor knelt in front of her, meeting her eye to eye. You were the reason she didn't. For the first time since her parents died, Amara felt something unfamiliar wrap around her chest. Belonging. As weeks passed, Amara was allowed to visit daily. She sat beside Lila during therapy sessions, holding her hand, telling stories, laughing without restraint. Lila began to whisper more words, simple ones at first. Yes, no, later. Every word felt like a miracle. The media caught wind of the story. A billionaire's daughter, a mysterious recovery, a homeless girl at the center of it all. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Experts argued on television. Some called it emotional placebo. Others called it coincidence. Victor ignored them all. When a reporter finally asked him what cured his daughter, Victor answered calmly. Love, he said, and a child the world overlooked. When Lila was discharged, Victor made a decision that shocked his advisors. He invited Amara to live with them, not as charity, not as a headline, but as family. Amara cried the night she moved into the mansion, not because of the room or the bed or the clothes laid out for her, but because someone had chosen her. She insisted on one thing. "I don't want to forget the streets," she said quietly. Victor nodded. "Then we won't." Together, they started something new. Victor funded shelters, not cold buildings, but warm places filled with music, books, and laughter. Amara visited them often, talking to children the way she once talked to Lila, without pity, without fear. Lila continued healing. Her voice grew stronger, steadier, and when she laughed now, the sound filled rooms again. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Lila turned to Amara and spoke clearly. "You saved me." Amara shook her head, smiling softly. "No, you just remembered how to come back." Victor watched them from across the room, his heart full in a way success had never given him. He had spent his life believing money solved problems. A homeless girl taught him otherwise, and the lesson spread far beyond their home. Sometimes what science cannot heal, love dares to try. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest power, and sometimes the hope the world throws away becomes the very thing that saves it.